Do do do.
Welcome to CDR. I'm Bryn. This is Matt. And this week we did Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, SHYGA, The Sunlight, Mound.
Every time I look up Psychedelic Porn Crumpets in YouTube, I have to remember to change the O in porn to a 0. Otherwise, you just can't find anything in the YouTube algorithm. It gets angry at you. Let's just put it that way.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't just be slotting in the word porn into a YouTube search algorithm, can you?
Okay.
Anyway, fun fact.
Fun fact.
Moving right along.
Moving along. This is the 4th album by the Perth 5-piece band.
Yep. They are psychedelic rock to a T, basically.
To very much a T. They even sometimes would describe themselves as energetic mess of colours.
Well, I mean, every album cover is basically that.
Yeah, which is done by the lead singer, because he's got a diploma.
In tie-dyeing?
No, yeah, in tie-dyeing and graphic designing.
Okay, cool.
He's done all those. They also did this on their own record label.
Okay, great.
It's called What Reality. And they're touring in August.
Had you heard of the band before you listened to this?
No. Once again, this is how I picked my album. The album cover was cool.
The album cover was cool. I really like that green that they've got there.
A real punk out there. Just real sparkly pixels.
See, for me, like, I had heard of them before. I was a fan of their music.
Yep.
They had a track, Social Candy, that I think was friggin' sick from their last album. Got me into them a little bit. Not, like, a lot. Like, I could passively listen to them. But this is the first time I've sort of invested myself into an album. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your week like?
My week?
Yeah.
Well, let's start out with first listens.
Okay, yeah. What was it like?
Well, let's go on to Big Dijon, which is just, I thought was a bit of a creepy horror lullaby in the background, played to some sort of Spanish guitar rhythm as it pulls into the first track. Don't judge it by that. It's kind of, as it already leads into in the first lyric line is, if you blink, you'll miss it. And by true, you will miss this album, because after that, it just goes hectic. Yeah. And after my first one, I was like, holy shit, this was real quick. It felt really quick for a 41-minute album.
Yeah, absolutely. It rollicks along. The BPM basically stays up and up and up for the entirety of the album. There's only a couple of softer spots where it slows down a bit, but that's only relatively slow.
Yep.
There's no ballads on this
No,
album.
there's none.
There's maybe a couple of spots on the album where there are quiet, reflective pieces, but even those songs still have the odd killer riff. You know, the only song that comes to mind that's like that is the last track. And the intro to the last track fucking rocking as well.
Straight into it. It's the second half that sort of just goes into this, what would you call it?
So, was it so good that you were... Okay, was that a good thing for you? Like, you still haven't said whether you were like, fuck yeah, I'm ready for the journey to go
I was like, yeah, this is my album. This is my album.
This is your album?
This is my album. This album maybe and will stick around to the end of the day.
Yeah, fair enough. And so did you play it straight again?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I must admit that, like, this album feels like it was, geared to my tastes as well. I mean, it's fucking rocking the whole way through.
It really is. Throughout, you feel influences from, say, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizards.
Yeah.
Little Living End. Who else? White Stripes, Queen of the Stone Age.
Yeah, definitely Queens of the Stone Age vibes in a ton of songs.
In there, I felt it most in Terrors.
The funny thing is that on the first listen through, you get excited by the energy. By the time you get to like your later listens, you really start to tease out the different influences properly. When you're listening to it. Was your 10th listen as good as your first? Then how was your week with it?
Yeah, easy, comfortable.
Cool. So for me, like,
not every day I'd listen to it. I'd take a day off, but
that's loser talk.
If I get stuck into it, I got stuck into it 3 times today.
That's fine. See, I reckon I listened to this album somewhere between 18 to 20 times. I'm pretty sure. It was just easy for me to just listen to. Like I said, this music basically hits all the key notes for what I would love to have in an album. So, I mean, yeah, it was basically my wish list of music. So now I have to sit here and try and be as objective as I possibly can in trying to pick apart things that I didn't like with it. So, I mean, my review is going to be glowing. So I think I should try and hit the things that didn't work with the album first.
Okay, go.
It's a little bit derivative. As you mentioned, the first track, not Big Dijon, but as soon as you go into Tally Ho, the vocal lines run with the guitar melody, and you're just taken back to a King Gizzard album, basically. Yep. I don't think there's a ton of evolution in terms of the musical prowess there. It's not a carbon copy. It still has that Psychedelic Porn Crumpets flavor mixed in with it, but it does feel more than heavily influenced. It feels a little bit derivative, but
I thought that too, and I was just thinking, is that just a part of psychedelic genre?
Yeah, but the problem is that when you have a band like King Gizzard that's so genre defining, it's hard not to
pick it.
Well, decide whether there's even any difference to some extent. So that was some of the problems I had with one problem I had with the album. Another problem I had was the fact that the album is probably a little bit one-paced for my liking. So you have the first track, Big Dijon, which sort of sets it up with that ethereal, weird, medieval kind of whatever the hell that is, right? Which is fun. It's short enough that I don't worry too much about it. But then Tally Ho, Sawdust, Monkfish, Tripletosaurus, Mr. Prism, the Terrors, like, they're all at basically the same BPM the whole time, just punching and punching and punching. And it's a good thing for the album that Mr. Prism and the Terrors are as good a songs as they are, because by that stage, there's a little bit of fatigue in the pace of the album never really changing. It just holds, and then it finally takes a bit of a breather with Hats Off to the Green Bins, which I didn't actually like that much until I read the lyrics.
Yeah, okay, that does make a big difference to the song, because once you know the lyrics, it's more of a funny, happy kind of just bounce around.
It's like, literally, they've junked their own house, and it's the cleanup song.
Yeah, it's after a few house parties, and the landlord's coming around for house inspections.
Oh,
hats off to everyone who cleaned up.
Yeah, and then you have the glitter songs, and then you sort of back into that same tempo almost to the end of the album, with the exception of, say, Mango Terrarium and half of the last track. They would be my scathing critiques of it. It's the fact that it's a little bit one-paced, and that it's a little bit too much like the bands that they are trying to emulate. With that out of the way, I think literally everything else is great.
Yep.
I think the guitar work throughout the album is awesome.
I think most of their timing all together with the bass and the singing were great.
Oh, it
just
rocks.
Like really spot on with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are well polished.
I think the best songs on this album will probably be in my top 5 by the end of the year, I suspect.
Yep.
And it's possible there might even be 2 or 1. You know, I'll have to pick between a couple of children here in that instance. Like, I think Mr. Prism is an awesome track.
Straight Off was my favorite.
And then The Terrors was the next track, and I think it was even better. Like, I've never had, whilst we've been doing this podcast, that 1-2. Like, where you have one track where you're like, fuck, that was awesome. And then the next track was better. I think The Terrors has the best mix of dynamism with the way that the music comes in quiet, then comes in hard, punches you in the face, followed by the chord progressions that are just epic. I think I said to you just before the podcast that the outro riff basically sounds like you're versing the final boss on some fucking out of control video game, right?
Yep. Yeah,
in the best way possible.
And I relate to the epic song of not Garage Band, or like Rocksmith or shit like that.
It's a rock battle for sure.
It really is, yeah.
And the funny thing is that leading into that part is a fucking slow harpsichord reflective bit, right? All in the same song. And then the vocal melodies are just so catchy. You know, I played this song for Tony once, and she was singing it around the house all week. Yeah, that's the one. It's just so, like, syrupy and good, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it.
My downfall, my only probably about this I didn't like, is that you are right that there's so much influence with it.
Yeah.
The other part is like everything you could think of that would go into a song to make it catchy, or, you know, pauses, pumps, slow downs, and just like little parts.
Too many tricks, you reckon?
It just feels like it had everything in it. Everything was used for this album at one stage or another in any of the songs.
Are you seeing that as a detriment to it?
No, it just seems like so much was just crammed into one album. And I can't define if that's a bad. It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Sure.
It's a good thing because I don't care, but it's a bad thing that I've noticed. So like, it's all in there.
So, I mean, it sounds like you're picking apart some of the experimentation they might have had in the album. I mean, when you're chucking everything in, it's an experiment,
let's
right?
give it a go. They just kept following. Besides that, you're right, this is a great album.
Anything that you didn't like in terms of that experimentation?
No, I think this is awesome.
No, sorry. So you noticed that they were experimenting. Was there any particular song where you're like, I'd be happily just ignore that part?
Well, it's funny you bring up the part about the in Terror.
The Terror. Yeah,
that part I normally really hate about songs, but it flowed so well with this. I forgave it for it.
And the fact that it's punching at about 160 BPM.
Yeah, the bass is definitely keeping it rolling. And I can't remember which one it is. They just repeat forever and ever, forever.
Mango Terrarium.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really hate about songs, when they just repeat one word or one line for 20 lines until it's done. And that really kills me. But I can forgive it for this.
Yeah.
Because once again, it is punching at such a fast pace. And you're just like,
Now, this album was a little bit funny in terms of its narrative. Did you spend any time sort of digging through? I mean, obviously it's about a dude who loves his drinking and his drugs. I mean, that seems to be the theme of the albums.
The theme of the... True.
I mean,
if you want to dig down to the storyline of it, you could say there is somewhat, but there really is not if you dive deeper into it.
I honestly think that this album is actually a concept album. Everything is flavored by a person's drug experiences. So I mean, like, I'd typify it by saying, Tally Ho is the song about, the guy who loves his Avalanche Winterland handicap. That's fucking cocaine if ever I've
Obviously,
heard it, right?
Yeah. But you also know that Tally Ho is a paper for rolling cigarettes.
Yeah, but there's something of I feel like a natural progression as you go through it. The next song is like Sawtooth Monkfish, which has more drug references than Triple a Saw. The drug user finding the highs aren't so high, but the lows are getting lower. Just the typical thing.
Yeah, Velvet Mornings with New Days, Fresh Angles.
Yeah. Mr. Prism, the song intro basically says he has fucking pneumonia.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, he's gone to a doctor. The doctor said, you'd probably stop doing what you're doing. He's like, okay, but...
and then he gets, no one's got fear of nose.
Nobody fears the nose beers. And then you have the Terrors, which is literally his psychedelic terrors, right? Like, that's it. Like, he's either coming down from a bad high or he's on a bad high, right?
Yeah.
That's that song. And then, the 3 quieter tracks afterwards, Hats Off to the Green Bins and the 2 glitter tracks are kind of like...
coming back to reality.
Kind of, to some extent. And then you have tracks like Puke Box and Mundungus, where it's like, nah, we're back
on the beers. We've got an intervention.
Mundungus, is the intervention.
But it's like the first half is an intervention, gets sober, and then it's like, has a bad dream.
White light, red eyes.
Never been sober ever again.
And then I kind of think that the album tapers off into Mango Terrarium, where I actually think this is the point where he's broken to a point where he can't even leave his home. Like, the song is about, Mango Terrarium, Mammal Aquarium. He's stuck in his own house forever. And that's the song where that repeats that over and over.
Yeah.
And then this is the thing that I can't be sure of in terms of the narrative, and which is why there is obviously space for conjecture on it. So I'm not saying this is the way to think about the album, but the last track... it either feels like the main character gets old and reflects back on his old days and goes, you got to live while you're young, do what you need to do, but, progress. Or the main character is dead and he is the fable that other people tell to warn people off what that lifestyle was. And I tend to think that that second interpretation is correct only because of the name of the song, which is, The Tale of Gurney Gridman. I can't help but think that this guy's life is the fable of what you do if you just lead a hedonistic life. You're just going to drop dead at some point or go crazy or both in some sequence, right? Outside of that, I'm pretty sure I missed a ton of shit. So
you wouldn't be far off saying that most of the drug songs would be as someone's experience during a certain stage of being on drugs, coming down or, coming home at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock as the sun's coming up. I'd say, but they're all different people and all they're probably different members of the band and most likely while they were touring, getting run down and coming home just like looking for the last bit of energy, looking for the chemicals.
So I mean, so you're saying you feel like it was more just the concept was about the party, the ups and the downs, and because I'm not certain if there is a cohesive narrative.
I don't know. That's why I'm saying there's not a cohesive narrative, but I do like it that everything there is a stage through each one of these. How do I explain it?
He's showing different shades of the same thing.
Showing different shades, but it's also stages, you could say, of one's life before they end at the end with the tale of Gurney.
One of the other things I actually quite liked is I felt like in my mind, there's a character, right?
Yep. Was it the same character throughout the whole?
Yeah, I feel like it was. As they progressed, they got worse and worse to a point where they were socially defunct and then dead. So I felt like there was a progression, but in my mind, it felt like during the songs, anytime the character decided to get on the nose beers, it felt like that was the point in the track where the intensity was highest.
Yep.
And that's like Mr. Prism or Mundungus. Mundungus at the end where he's like white lights, red eyes. That's the part of the song where it's just up in flames. It's just going hard. You got the tweedly guitars in the background that you can't help but interpret as like some guy just like staring at a wall, but actually in his mind's eye he's seeing like fucking colours everywhere.
Pixels.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, he smells colours.
Yeah, he's on the astral plane at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Have you seen any of the film clips?
No, I should jump onto that. I'm guessing they're pretty spacey.
They clay animated.
Hells yeah.
And disturbing.
Good.
They've got a storyline along with them anyway. So I think they've used the same character, 3 or 4 times.
That's pointing in the narrative direction. If ever I heard it.
And then they change up characters in one of the songs as well.
That's a double bluff.
Nah.
Yep. I'm guessing based on how glowing we've been, you'll happily listen to this album again.
Yeah, goddammit. Mr. Prison's in there for sure.
Any other things that you want to say? Have we missed anything? I mean, I have a ton of notes here, but they don't need to all be said.
Anything you would really like to throw in there?
Nothing sort of stands out to me. I think the thing that really I enjoyed about this album is not only was the music good, but when I delved into the lyrics, there were some really fun, creative lyrics in there as well. I think it's particularly well-rounded, if a little derivative, and that's sort of how I would explain the album to someone, but that's not at all a slight on it. You should absolutely listen to it. This is, hands down, worth a listen.
Fuck yeah.
Score out of 10, Britney boy?
I'm not going to give it... I'm going to say you're going to give it 8.
I think it was better than that. I think it was 8.5 out of 10. It was really good. I really enjoyed my week with it. I'll listen to it again.
Yep. Psychedelic rock. I say definitely go see listen to them and see them. They're touring in August this year. Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. And they have got some pretty sick merch. Check that shit out.
Tie-dyed shirts, I assume.
They got tie-dye shirts. They sell the vinyls. They got their own tally-ho papers with their names on it, and a vinyl disc mat to go on it.
Sick.
Yeah, they got some cool shit.
So what are we doing next week, Britney boy? I know it's meant to be my album choice, but
that's right. We're going to put ourselves through a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
Enjoyment, pain. BDMS.
What's BDMS?
BD, bondage. Oh shit, it's bondage.
BDSM.
What did I say?
Doesn't matter. So we're going to be listening to every single King Gizzard album.
Yes, we are.
With the exception of LW, which will land at some point.
The week after.
And then we'll review that. And then we'll be done with King Gizzard until they release another album in like 3 months' time. We'll see you next week for the King Gizzard torture lesson.
Woo! Tune in for next week for big words from Matt.
I like big words.
Bye.
Bye. And then I saw white light, red eyes. I ain't been sober no more.